A startling revelation has emerged from deep within the corridors of Buckingham Palace and Clarence House, sending ripples of intrigue through the world of royal commentary. For years, two of the most prominent women in the British monarchy, the Princess Royal and Queen Camilla, the wife of King Charles III, have quietly coexisted as key pillars of the crown. Yet a new and highly detailed report, based on conversations with palace insiders who spoke to the Times, has laid bare a profound and almost irreconcilable contrast in the way these two formidable figures carry out their public duties. What has been described not merely as different styles, but as opposite approaches has ignited intense speculation about harmony, hierarchy, and the very direction of the modern monarchy. At the center of this unfolding narrative stands Princess Anne, long celebrated as the hardest-working member of the royal family. Year after year, official court circular figures place her at the top of the engagement leaderboard, often completing well over 200 official events annually, more than any other royal, including the King and the Prince of Wales. Those who work closely with her speak in awed tones of a work ethic that borders on the superhuman. Every Friday, without exception, a substantial red leather dispatch bag, known simply as the bag, is delivered from St. James's Palace to Gatcombe Park, her Gloucestershire estate. Inside are not casual notes or bullet point summaries, but exhaustive briefing documents, biographies of every person she will meet, from charity workers to heads of state, technical papers on factories or hospitals she will tour, historical context for commemorative events, suggested talking points, and even detailed floor plans of venues. Far from treating this mountain of material as an optional extra, the Princess Royal dedicates almost her entire weekend to mastering it. By the time Monday arrives, she is not merely acquainted with the contents, she has absorbed them to an extraordinary degree. Names, dates, technical specifications, personal anecdotes, everything is at her fingertips. This meticulous preparation was vividly illustrated during her intensive 2-day working visit to Singapore in late 2024, a trip undertaken with her husband, Vice Admiral Sir Tim Lawrence, to commemorate 60 years of diplomatic ties, despite relentless tropical rain and high humidity that left many in the entourage wilting, and maintained a punishing schedule that would test the stamina of someone half her age. At the Rolls-Royce Sealtar campus, she did not simply smile for photographs beside gleaming aircraft engines. She interrogated senior engineers about thrust-to-weight ratios, supply chain efficiencies, and productivity benchmarks, citing specific figures from the briefing papers she had studied days earlier. Staff present described executives as visibly taken aback by the depth of her questioning. Later, aboard the Royal Navy's offshore patrol vessel HMS Spey, she discussed rotational deployments in the Indo-Pacific with a fluency that suggested long experience of naval operations. At the Kranji War Cemetery, her remarks to veterans were rich with historical detail. At the National Orchid Garden, she displayed genuine botanical interest as a new hybrid was named in her honor. In separate audiences with President Tharman Shanmugaram and Prime Minister Lawrence Wong, her grasp of current bilateral issues was impeccable. The whirlwind concluded with a session in an Airbus flight simulator and further in-depth engineering talks at Rolls-Royce headquarters. In just 48 hours, and seamlessly inhabited the worlds of aerospace manufacturing, military history, diplomacy, horticulture, and maritime defense, all made possible by those solitary weekends spent poring over the BAG. By stark contrast, Queen Camilla's approach to royal duty could scarcely be more different. Palace sources who spoke to the Times were strikingly candid. The Queen, they say, often barely glances at her briefing folders. Detailed technical appendices and lengthy biographical notes are frequently left largely unread. Instead, Camilla relies almost entirely on instinct, emotional intelligence, and an innate ability to connect with people on a profoundly human level. Where and arrives armed with data and ready to probe, Camilla arrives ready to listen, to respond spontaneously, and to offer warmth that feels unscripted and authentic. Her engagements are less about demonstrating mastery of complex subject matter and more about creating moments of genuine empathy and ease. Defenders within her circle argue passionately that this is not laziness, but a deliberate and highly effective philosophy of monarchy. They point to the darkest months of King Charles's cancer treatment in 2024, when Camilla shouldered an almost unimaginable double burden, a full slate of public engagements while privately nursing her husband through grueling chemotherapy and the terror of an uncertain prognosis. On visits to cancer wards and hospices, she met patients and families who were themselves confronting mortality, yet she never allowed her own anguish to surface. Former aides describe how she would enter a room, sense immediately who needed a hand held or a quiet joke to lighten the unbearable, and offer comfort that felt deeply personal rather than rehearsed. In those moments, no amount of technical briefing about oncology protocols could have substituted for simple, heartfelt presence. The deliberate use of the word opposite by multiple palace insiders is what elevates this from routine gossip to something potentially consequential. Different styles have always coexisted within the royal family. Think of the late Queen's encyclopedic preparation versus Prince Philip's more improvisational wit, but rarely have they been framed so bluntly and so publicly as mutually incompatible. When courtiers begin leaking such comparisons to a newspaper of record, questions inevitably arise. Who benefits from drawing this contrast now? Is Anne's camp quietly emphasizing her indispensable work ethic at a time when the king is weakened by illness and the Prince of Wales is still establishing his own footprint? Or is Camilla's team pushing back against perceptions that she is somehow less rigorous than her sister-in-law? The timing could hardly be more sensitive. King Charles continues to battle cancer. The monarchy is navigating a delicate slimmed-down future, and difficult conversations about long-term succession are impossible to avoid forever. In this atmosphere, every public utterance and every leaked comparison is scrutinized for subtext. Princess and style harks back to an older, almost Victorian ideal of duty, the notion that a royal must justify their privileged position through visible expertise and unrelenting service. It is the same ethos that drove her mother to read state papers until the very end. Camilla, by contrast, embodies a more contemporary, emotionally literate model of monarchy, one that prioritizes approachability and relatability over intellectual display. Both approaches have undeniable merits. Anne's rigor lends the institution credibility in boardrooms, factories, and scientific institutes. It reassures traditionalists that the crown remains serious and informed. Camilla's warmth has helped humanize a family long criticized for emotional reserve. It reassures a skeptical public that royals are capable of genuine empathy in an age of mental health awareness and post-Diana expectations of vulnerability. Yet the public framing of these women as polar opposites risks transforming complementary strengths into rival factions. Princess Anne has never sought applause. For decades, she has accepted being the overlooked workhorse, while more photogenic relatives dominated headlines. To see her diligence now wielded, perhaps without her knowledge, as implicit criticism of the Queen feels uncomfortably like the kind of palace briefing wars that plagued the 1990s. What we are witnessing is not necessarily the opening salvo of a destructive power struggle, but rather a pivotal moment of choice for the House of Windsor. The monarchy can allow these stylistic differences to harden into competing visions: old guard versus modern, cerebral versus heartfelt, duty versus empathy, and risk the kind of internal fracture that has wounded the family before. Or it can embrace the obvious truth that in an era of unprecedented scrutiny and rapid social change, the crown needs both the steadfast expertise of a princess and the compassionate authenticity of a Queen Camilla. The wisest path forward is not to force either woman into the other's mold, nor to tolerate leaks that pit them against one another, but to celebrate their contrasting gifts as proof of the institution's adaptability. And keeps the monarchy credible among experts and traditionalists. Camilla keeps it loved among ordinary people carrying private pain. Together, rather than in opposition, they represent something greater than either could achieve alone: a royal family capable of both commanding respect and touching hearts. If the palace can close ranks, silence the briefers, and present these two remarkable women as complementary rather than contradictory, the crown will emerge stronger, proof that even in its 9th decade of service, the British monarchy still possesses the resilience to evolve without losing its soul.